Alright, so this is probably the worst repaired RAV that I've seen in a long time. Now at face value, it really doesn't look that bad. Sure, there's some ugly panel gaps and maybe some ugly paint, but wait till you get a little closer. So I'm going to start over here on the left hand side. And we're going to start by looking at this gap. Now the hood's closed. Fully latched, fully seated. And you can see headlight and the grill don't line up. And that carries down and around. And you get up here, you got some really ugly panel gaps. And you can even see the orange peel. See the orange peel in the paint. See that? All the bumps and ripples. And then you get up here, and you can see that the headlight isn't even fully seated. And that gap, yeah, that's a gap that I can stick my pinky finger into. And that's with the hood closed. Again, we'll go up. We'll look here. Some really bad gaps. Some more really bad gaps. And we'll go down this way. And you can see how uneven the gaps are. And then just to give you an idea, here is what this fender well is supposed to look like. It's nice and straight. Aren't a lot of weird imperfections. And I'll show you this because we're going to get over to the other side and see even more carnage. Now for starters, missing a trim piece there. No big deal. So then continue down the left side. You can see that the paint is really bad. It's like they just laid on too much clear coat. You can see like a bump there right on that leading edge. Now we're going to go down the driver's door, and you can see here that the handle's been damaged, and at an angle you can kind of see how that's bowed in. And they even painted over the door edge guards. Alright, so looking down, you can kind of see that the fender doesn't quite line up right. So we're going to go over to the right side. So as we go along the bottom, you can see that certain things don't line up. The different bumper pieces don't line up. Everything's just not quite right. So let's look at this. Here's another really ugly gap where that's supposed to be a lot closer. Here's the headlight and hood gap. Now let's look at this. Look at this. That's not even right. You can see that the gap here is all messed up, and the headlight doesn't even sit flush with the fender. So we'll look up and look at this gap. Look at this big gap. Really big gap. You're not supposed to be able to stick your finger in there like that. Like, that's a lot. Of course that's not in there, right? So we'll compare this side. The right side that's been hit and pushed over to the left. And then look at the gap on this side. And now that you kind of like look at it closer, you can see that there's nothing's right. But that's just the outside. And if the outside looks bad, can you imagine what it looks like underneath? Well, I'm about to show you. So it's had a rotor replaced. It's had an axle replaced. The wheel bearing's been replaced. New strut, new sway bar end link, new tie rod end controller or control arm ball joint. But look at this. Look at this. They bent the inner tie rod and never fixed it. It's bent. Like, that's got a definite bow to it, but somehow this thing drove perfectly straight. But now let's look up. Ah, yes. This is where the real damage is. So you can see here there's damage right above the subframe mount. I'm guessing where the strut probably struck it. And then you look up here. Now there's a bunch of sealant right here in this frame rail, and it's like the frame rail itself is bowed in. It's not flat like the other side. You look right here, and this is supposed to be perfectly flat, but it's all bent in. Well, kind of hard to see, but if you go this way, it's a little easier to see how badly that's bowed in. And you look up here, and the grommet for the brake line isn't even where it's supposed to be. And you can see all sorts of scuffing and damage and rippling to this fender apron and inner wheel well. And with that damage there by the subframe mount, it's actually pushed the subframe over probably like a good inch and a half. So before I put it up in the air, I'm gonna pop the hood. And this is really unfortunate, actually. I'm gonna pop the hood, if I can reach it. There we go. So here's another thing. Really ugly paint. Like really ugly paint. Where they like sprayed on some clear coat. Oh yeah, look at that. And then, so check this out here. And there's orange peel, and then you can see where they tried to blend the paint and they just sanded the shit out of it. So the A-pillar looks really bad. And again, really bad gaps. The fender is actually underneath the A-pillar here, but the gap here is really bad too. There's no reason this gap should be this wide here. It should be pretty flush with this corner. So that's pretty bad. So let me pop the hood. And for starters, the hood doesn't open correctly. So here's a little disappointing thing. I actually bent the hood striker to get it to close properly. Just to give you an idea of how far the core support has been moved over in the accident. I'll grab my flashlight again. And here's where things get really ugly. So for starters, they never hooked the AC compressor back up. And you can see down here the high pressure line, they just kind of popped on there and hand threaded a bolt into it. So you look over here and you can see where they just kind of like beat out the upper core support leg. You can see there's just some like hammering and prying marks. And if you look over here, you can see that part of the fender apron was severely damaged. And come on, focus. There we go. Really shitty tape job. You can see more of the front mounting points have just been kind of like pried and pushed around. Yeah, that's pretty ugly. And it's hard to see, but on the back side of the strut tower, there's some really bad rippling right where that brake line comes in, which is underneath that AC line. So the strut tower has been damaged pretty bad. But then you look over at this side, and for the most part, everything's straight, except for the fact that the core support's been pushed over far enough that that bolt hole doesn't line up. So, here's another thing. This bracket here is all bent. Not even straightened properly. Yeah, it just kind of like, it doesn't even look right. All the paint's really bad. Nothing is lined up at all. And it's really unfortunate that this is a really low mileage vehicle and it's just been cobbled together. It's really a shame. Yeah, that's unfortunate. And even like you can see where they just kind of like pushed and pried on things. They really didn't do a good job at all. And in fact, oh yeah, look at that. Look at all that pounding and stuff. God, that's really disappointing that there's people out there that really just don't care. And if you give them some money to fix something, it might look halfway decent on the outside, but you know, I wouldn't really trust this vehicle to protect me properly in the event of an accident. Because, you know, as far as the front end is messed up, you know, what other damage are you going to run into? Is it, you know, does the frame permanently bent. Oh, there we go. There's some more of that. See, it's just kind of like pried on. So we'll go up in the air so I can show you the subframe. Just one last little thing. See ya. Even the stuff underneath is not good. There's definitely a lot of pieces missing, things that are out of whack, just things that aren't right. So here, I'll show you. So this rail right here is supposed to be more pointed to the right. You can see that it's fairly close to the oil pan, and it looks, you know, slight curvature to the right. But you look at this side, the left-hand side, and that rail is pushed so far out to the left. Like, they're supposed to be fairly parallel. Well, not parallel, but they're supposed to mirror each other pretty closely. So obviously the lower part of the core support got moved over quite a bit. And I'll show you this based upon the witness marks here on the subframe bolts. This side got pushed back a little bit. This is the right-hand side. And then here's the left-hand side, which, let me see if I can show you this way. Here we go. Here's the left-hand side. You can see that that got pushed that way. My guess is that movement is from the subframe, or the frame rails being shifted. But I'm not a body shop guy. I'm not a third-party inspector. But there are just some things that you just know from years of working on cars. I've been doing this for 10 plus years. I'm like, look at this. There's that. Like, all these weird, unnecessary fasteners. Like, they didn't reinstall things correctly. There's trim here missing. And God, this just bothers me so bad, how this frame rail is severely damaged and the brake line holder's been damaged. It's unacceptable. And you can see witness marks there on the subframe mount where the subframe's shifted. And even though they did their best to replace things and align it, you know, there's still a lot of underlying damage that's really a shame. Yeah, like, look at that. They just manhandled that. So, yeah, it's really, really a shame. It's unfortunate that this had to have been done like this. I mean, it didn't have to be done like this, but it was, and it's a disaster. But it's a shame. Even looks like this might be a used axle. Folks, don't trust people that say they can do it for cheaper, because obviously this is one of those scenarios where they probably took it somewhere because someone could do it cheaper, and they just ruined this car. This thing will never be right again, and honestly, it should probably go on a frame machine just to get straightened out. But yeah, it's really unfortunate. And the ABS VSC track lights are on, the lane keep, pre-collision, and radar cruise lights are all on, and you know, it's really a shame that, you know, you should really take your vehicle to someone who's trustworthy and not just gonna throw parts at it. Because what's really bad is this side of the vehicle, the bumper doesn't really stick out much. But if you go to this side and you look down the side the same way, you can see that this sticks out just a little bit more. So, poorly repaired car. Yeah, that's awful. That's an atrocious repair job. Nothing lines up at all. But, yeah. Oh yeah, this isn't even attached right. The washer bottle leaks. I had just filled it, and it's already down past the neck. But, yeah. See ya.